Okay, so welcome everybody. My name is Linda Culleton and welcome to the Free from OCD webinar. So I'd like to thank you all for coming here and joining me for this information session. So who is this webinar for? This webinar is for you if you are experiencing OCD. So that's in the form of, obviously, if you're on this webinar, you will know what OCD is, or maybe you are even on the webinar, you have a family member that's experiencing OCD. So we're not going to go into loads of detail about what OCD is. OCD is obsessive intrusive thoughts. Potentially there can be just for a person may have pure O, which that would be obsessive intrusive thoughts. And then there can be compulsions with that. So most people will experience compulsions like the physical compulsions we might see, like the check-in behaviors and certain rituals a person will have to do. When it comes to pure O, there isn't the physical like checks, okay, but there is the mental rumination, the mental check. So that is a compulsion in itself. And sometimes, a lot of people that come to me, they'll say they're pure O, but they don't have compulsions. And when you go in deeper, they do have a lot of mental compulsions. That's where they start going back, kind of analysing the thoughts, checking the thoughts. So kind of spend a lot of time ruminating. That's like a compulsive behaviour. Okay, and this is for you if you're stuck in the loop of fear and anxiety. That is really OCD. That's really created from OCD. Okay, so what you will learn in this session is you will learn how to become free from OCD. You can eliminate intrusive thoughts of any nature, and I really want to emphasize that because a lot of people come to me and they think that their intrusive thoughts are the worst and think that their intrusive thoughts can never get better. So I want to reassure you that when you're on this call, that this can work for any intrusive thoughts, okay? It will eliminate all obsessive behaviors for good, and it will obviously regain peace of mind and feel empowered in your mental health. So who doesn't want that? Okay, so what I need from you this evening, or wherever you are this evening here in Ireland, is focus. So if you can just, less distractions. I'm obviously not going to say turn off your phone because you're probably watching it on your phone. So just give me your undivided attention. That would be great. Thank you. So who am I? My name is Linda Culleton. I'm from Ireland. I'm an OCD and anxiety expert. I have a podcast that you can find on Spotify, Free from OCD podcast, which I just launched basically in December. And my aim is to regularly publish content that can help people empower their mental health, that people that suffer from OCD. I'm a best-selling author. I have wrote a book for gratitude for kids and personal development for kids, and I'm a speaker. So I speak at different events around mental health, specifically obsessive compulsive disorder. So I suppose why me? I suppose it's because I've had OCD myself, so I can relate to you on this call or to anyone out there that has OCD, because I know the debilitating effect it has on your life. But the good news is that I also know the solution. I have helped thousands of people around the world with this unique treatment. Okay, so moving on, I'm just sharing this because it's important to know kind of my background, what has led me to do this. I have been on RT2 with Vogue Williams sharing a documentary on mental health. I have wrote articles and different things to promote the awareness of this treatment for OCD. So what led me to doing all this? So I used to be an accountant back in the day, and I had, anxiety for a lot of my life. I was in a job that I didn't like. I was suffering with anxiety, but I didn't really know. So I didn't know what it was because it was a normal thing to be very stressed in the environment that we were in. And I would have used alcohol, like a lot of people at the weekends, but it really was cover up this kind of feeling of feeling anxious. At that time, then I would have had anxiety for years, but didn't really know, as I said, what it was. I had social anxiety kind of come into the mix. And I noticed that I would have had a lot of negative thought patterns. And then I started to have intrusive thoughts. And I suffered from OCD, intrusive thoughts on harm. That was the first time I ever experienced an intrusive thought that really stuck. So it really was frightening. So I'd had harm, intrusive thoughts, first of all, of others, of family members, and then of myself. And then that developed into sexual intrusive thoughts as well. So I had a combination of intrusive thoughts, and I really want to, as you learn through the webinar, the intrusive thoughts, the content of the intrusive thoughts is irrelevant from a treatment point of view. But obviously, from where I was at the time, they're very relevant because they're obviously very, very scary. So at that time, I didn't really tell anyone. I kept it to myself because I'd never experienced thoughts that were so invasive, frightening, and really, really scared me. Okay, so I did keep it to myself for a long time, which I would advise people not to do. And within that, of course, that kind of feeds on itself. It feeds the anxiety, it feeds the thoughts. And when I was in that loop, I honestly did feel like I was losing my mind. I was so anxious, and I was consumed with it 24 hours a day. Basically, my relief was sleep. I used to look forward to going to sleep, and I kind of didn't look forward to waking up. And that's the truth of how it was. It was very, very severe. The thoughts weren't just because I help people with OCD, they are obsessive. The nature of them is obsessive, so they're constant. For me, it was more, yes, in terms of compulsion behaviors, it was very much checking the internet. So I didn't have any the physical checks, or that was like a physical check, but some people have very, many routines or rituals to have to do. Mine was checking the internet to feel like, was this normal? Is this really OCD or is this me? And that's really when I came to realize that there was a condition called OCD, and I'd never heard of anything like this before, but that there was a lot of knowledge online, a lot of awareness around that I realized, okay, this is OCD, because I had the exact same symptoms. So I kept it to myself, as I said, for some time, but I was doing the normal things I was doing before, still working in the job that I disliked, fueled anxiety, then was fed then by drinking at the weekend. And it really was a cycle of disaster, really led me into a very, very dark place. So I eventually did go for treatment. And these are the different types of treatment I sought. Okay, so I would have started with, I did go to a GP at the time. I was issued with antidepressants, which maybe some of you are on, I don't know. But I wasn't depressed, and I had stated to the doctor that I'm not depressed. Yes, in fact, I was completely the opposite. I was really, really anxious. Of course, I had a low mood. There's no denying that. How would you not have a low mood when you're having these intrusive thoughts? But I wasn't depressed. So I did take the medication in terms of, I fulfilled the prescription. I kept it in the room, in my bedroom. And I was like my reassurance to myself. If it got really, really bad, I knew they were there. But I felt like, just trying other things. So I went down the path of the known treatments that you may have seen for OCD. So I done CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. I done exposure response therapy as well. I done talk therapy. I went to various different healers. I took supplements. All these treatments for me, again, this is my own personal story, they all have a part to play, 100%. And I'm all for therapy. I'm all for talk therapy. I'm 100% advocate of healers, supplements. I'm all for this. For me, I got the understanding around what was happening for me. I got the understanding that my thoughts were creating this feeling of anxiety. The anxiety was fueling the compulsion or the checking, and was also fueling more of the thoughts, okay? But this led me into a road of a journey, really, of kind of going to many different therapists. So I would have some relief, definitely. and then I'd be spiked again. What I mean by spiked, I would get triggered again, and I'd be back into the loop of the intrusive thoughts, the anxiety. And then I'd be going to another therapist, and I'd be trying all these other methods. And again, it was kind of a vicious cycle, to be honest. So basically, with all that, all these things that I've done here, they were treating the symptoms. The symptoms were, I was dealing with, like, for example, with CBT, for me personally, I was dealing with the thoughts. So I was, educated on, looking for evidence against, looking for evidence for these thoughts, and trying to have some rationalization around this. With ERP, I was, doing exposure around if I had different things around intrusive thoughts, if I seen stuff in the kitchen, like a knife, and I had a trigger around that, exposure around this, okay? That did help. But for me, personally, the symptoms were so, like, if I was only dealing with a thought, my intrusive thoughts had changed. So one day they could be around, I was triggered with a knife, the next day it could be a sexual intrusive thought. So I felt like that my thoughts were changing, the theme of them were changing. And in fact, when I was in the trigger response, you may notice that all the rational, logical techniques that I learned completely went, like, they were completely irrelevant, because I was in that moment, I was in complete and utter survival. I was in the flight and fight, and no amount of understanding, logic, talk therapy, all this thing would get me out of that, because in that moment, it was completely true. In that moment, I was in absolute panic stations, and really I couldn't see clearly a way out of that. And that's because I was dealing with the symptoms of OCD, okay? So with all these techniques, and again, I'm all for treatments, I advocate each and every one of them, but for me personally, it gave me short-term relief, if any. It gave me an understanding of how the thoughts create our feelings, but it involved me doing constant therapy, and I was relapsing a lot. So I spent a lot of time kind of in therapy. Then I'd feel good for maybe a couple of months, if even, and then I was relapsing again. I get a trigger point. But unfortunately, I was still stuck in the cycle of the intrusive thoughts, the fear, and the compulsions. So basically, why is that? Because obsessive compulsive disorder is symptoms of underlying fear. So basically, the treatments that I'd done so far were dealing with the symptom. They weren't dealing with the fear. And because I was dealing with the symptoms, I was only getting short-term relief. I wasn't getting long-term relief. And maybe you can relate to the same as what I'm saying. So basically, then I was looking for the root cause. I needed to find treatment that worked on the root cause, the root of OCD. OCD is the symptom of fear. We needed something to look at the root cause. How do I change this? What is driving these behaviors? What is driving this obsessive thinking? What is driving these compulsions? And then we come to the human brain. So the human brain is designed to ensure your survival at all times. Okay, that's its job. It's not designed to keep us happy. It's designed to keep us alive. It's designed to keep us safe. So we're going to move on to the mind. Okay, and the mind is, we're going to look at two parts of the mind. We're going to look at the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. So the conscious mind controls our logic, reasoning, rational aspect of our thinking. And our subconscious mind is the emotional part of our mind. It's really where a lot of our emotional responses lie. All our deep emotions are in the subconscious. And this is very, very interesting. This is it really, really is amazing to know this. Okay, so the conscious mind controls 5% of our results. What does that mean? It controls 5% of our thinking style, okay? How we think, our logic, short-term memory, willpower, and critical thinking. Our subconscious mind, which is like you see there, it's like the iceberg, and it's way below, nearly the seabed. This controls all our beliefs, our emotions, all come from here. Our habits, how our habits are formed, all from there. Our values, long-term memory, imagination, intuition. But most importantly for this webinar, our fears. Our fears and emotional perceptions of ourselves, how we view ourselves, how we view the world, our fears. They're all stored in the unconscious, called the subconscious. And a lot of them are dormant. We don't see them. It's like a seabed. We don't see the seabed unless we do scuba diving. So we don't see what's in the subconscious, but we know what's in the subconscious by how we feel, our reactions to things, our triggers, how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive others, our emotional responses on a day-to-day basis. And this is very, very interesting. Subconscious controls 95% of our behavior. And how is this important when we look at OCD? The subconscious guides your autonomic nervous system, which is part of the nervous system responsible for control of the bodily functions like breathing, the heartbeat, blood flow, organ function, and digestive processes. So it controls 95% of our behavior, 95% of how we react, and also controls majority of the autonomic nervous system. And our nervous system has one core objective, and that's to keep us alive. So again, it's back to survival. The subconscious mind controls your autonomic nervous system. And this is made up of, I'm not sure if you would have heard these words before, but you may have: parasympathetic, rest and digest. In other words, calmness, clarity, sleeping, good sleeping, being able to sleep properly, digestion, being able to digest our food. Sympathetic, I'm sure you've heard of this: flight, fight, and freeze. This is when we're in the overactive state. Now we need the sympathetic on, like it's important because it's for survival. This gets us ready to run, it gets us ready to take action, it gets us ready, it gets us motivated, it gets us to take action, okay? It gets us to be aware of potential threat. So it's really, really important, okay? Now remember that the subconscious controls the nervous system. So whatever's in the subconscious, it is controlling the nervous system, okay? So the problem then comes with when whatever we have in the subconscious mind, it is activating either the parasympathetic nervous system or the sympathetic. Now, most likely with OCD, there is some fear that's in the subconscious and it's activating the sympathetic, which is the flight, fight, and freeze response. And it's activating it too much. In other words, it's overactive. And this is where you feel anxious, you feel overwhelmed, you feel panic. But this is automatic. We have to really understand that this isn't conscious. This isn't voluntary. This is automatic. It's like having an automatic button switched on all the time. The subconscious is controlling all the nervous system. And if we have fear there, it is alerting us via our nervous system, i.e. via how we feel, anxious, overwhelmed, panic, okay? That's why it feels like when we are trying to get better from OCD, like pushing a boulder up a mountain. Why? Because a lot of the techniques, a lot of the treatments out there are only using the conscious level of the mind, which is the 5%, which is the logic, looking at the intrusive thoughts from a logical point of view. But the intrusive thoughts are not logical, they're illogical, and they're driven by emotion, and the emotion is stored at the subconscious. So I hope that makes sense, that you can clearly understand, and we can go through that later on, okay? So what is the key to all this? Well, if we know that the problem is that the subconscious is controlling the nervous system, or whatever's in the subconscious, it's activating the sympathetic part of the nervous system. It's overactive. There is nothing wrong with we need to have the sympathetic state. We need to have that activated, but the problem is when it's overactivated. In other words, it's switched on all the time. How is it switched on? Because subconscious mind is holding some fear, it's holding some emotional response about yourself. This is why it's been activated. So regulation of the nervous system is the key to OCD recovery. Regulating the parasympathetic and the sympathetic into a state of balance is the key to OCD recovery. So let's look at this OCD cycle. And I'm sure you may have seen this before online, different things. So a lot of people come to me and they want to get rid of this, the obsessions. Okay, they want to get rid of this, the thoughts, and yes, the compulsions. Maybe they're spending a long time doing certain compulsions, but it's mainly the thoughts. Really, a lot of people can have OCD, but it's only when it becomes a problem, like the thoughts are so intrusive, they're so scary, they're frightening, they cause a lot of shame, they're embarrassed, they're really, really intrusive for the person. That's when they'll start looking for treatment. So they come to me and they want treatment for this, the obsession part, okay? Now, if I only looked at treating someone based on obsessions, we would be forever treating someone based on obsessions, because the obsessions can change. They can move. Like myself, that had experienced harm intrusive thoughts, it moved to sexual intrusive thoughts, it moved back to harm intrusive thoughts. What we want to do is we want to change this. Okay, this is coming from the nervous system. So once we break this, in other words, once we change the reaction to the thoughts, we break the loop. So you see the way it's a cycle. It's a cycle, okay? So once we imagine we took away the anxiety, we break the OCD cycle because it feeds on each other. But this is the main part that feeds everything else. So the intrusive thoughts create the anxiety. Anxiety creates the compulsions. We do compulsions. Why do we do compulsions? Because they're a coping mechanism. They give relief, but short-term relief, as you know, but they have to be there because it's impossible to tell someone not to do compulsions. When you're having intrusive thoughts of harming a family member, of course you're going to do compulsions. It's impractical to say that these thoughts are not true. It's impractical to say that this will pass. It's impractical to say that to a person. Why? Because this is so high. All right. So obviously then you do a compulsion, which is natural. You get some short-term relief, but boom, we're back into the intrusive thoughts again, and the cycle continues. So we don't change the intrusive thoughts because we'll be forever. The thoughts are irrelevant. Yes, they feel true, but they're not true. The thoughts itself isn't the issue. It's the reaction to the thoughts. So when we change the reaction to the thoughts, we break this cycle. What does happen then is, if the reaction to the thought starts to dissipate, we no longer need to do the compulsions, and therefore the cycle is broken. Okay, that's basically how it works. So how does that actually work? Well, regulation of your nervous system will break this OCD loop. That's ultimately what it is. It's very, very simple when we break it down. It's very simple when we break it down. And I understand people want to get rid of this, and that's what will happen. But we get rid of this first, and then this changes, i.e. the obsessions change. But first it has to be the reaction, and that's at the nervous system, all right? So regulation of your nervous system breaks the OCD cycle loop. So the solution, which I'm sure you all want to know, solution is, as I said, I've gone through my own journey with OCD, and I've done all these specific treatments, and they all have their place, and I'm all advocate for all these, but this is my own personal story. So for me, it was, I started doing Kundalini yoga because I was trying everything, and I ended up being a teacher from that practice. We've done a lot of stuff in the nervous system. And I realized there was a technique that was known to help obsessive compulsive. So this is a specific technical breath techniques that balance the nervous system, specifically for obsessive compulsive disorder. So as I'd done this over time, change happened, and it happened very, very quick. And my life changed. And my mission was that because I came through what I came through, and I 100% understand the pain when you have OCD, I really, really understand that. So it's my mission to bring these techniques to as many people as possible, because they work and you are empowered for life. And again, we're going to the root of the issue. So with these breath techniques, published clinical trials have been carried out on the efficacy of these techniques for OCD. Okay, so there is research to back up this if you are into that kind of, you want research that is available. Experts have claimed that these techniques in time can eliminate all obsessive compulsive disorders. And that is true. So just for me personally, I no longer have obsessive compulsive disorder. Will I ever think intrusive thought again? Yeah, I could, of course. What makes a thought intrusive? What makes a thought intrusive is the reaction to the thought. So, like, there is no such thing as, you can never say you're never going to think an intrusive thought, okay? But it's the reaction to the thoughts that you change. So if I had a thought now that I could say is intrusive, well, I won't have a reaction to it, so it'll just go by, okay? It'll just float by like some other, like most people think intrusive thoughts at some stage in their life. The difference between them and between me at the time was that I was holding some emotional response in my subconscious mind that activated the nervous system, that put me into overdrive, and I felt like I was a bad person. I felt guilty for thinking these thoughts. I felt shame. I felt embarrassment, and all these high emotions that we carry when we have these intrusive thoughts. Okay, so as I said, my life was transformed. What happened was that initially the anxiety started to dissipate, and it dissipated over time. It doesn't take long, but it dissipated over time, and I got relief. The reaction to the thoughts started to reduce, and then the compulsions were no longer needed. Compulsions for me were constantly checking the internet. Again, the anxiety was very, very high. I didn't take the medication, but very close. I had a lot of thoughts of self-harm. I didn't self-harm, but I did have all these thoughts because the anxiety was so high. So, looking back now, yes, my life is completely transformed without a doubt. And I'm so grateful that it is, and grateful to share this knowledge with you. Okay, so we'll move on to some testimonials from that. When you find something that changes your life, and especially when you've gone through so much pain with OCD, you have to share it with others. It's impossible to keep it to yourself because you just can't. So I went on to work with people. I went on to help people with OCD and share the message. So I want to share some testimonials, just some stories of people that have had OCD and how their recovery is. Okay, so this is Monica. Monica had suicidal OCD intrusive thoughts for 28 years. Okay, so she was having obsessive intrusive thoughts of suicide on a constant basis. Okay, so I'll just read a little bit about Monica. So my name is Monica. I suffered from severe anxiety and from intrusive thoughts for 28 years. I tried everything for help or relief from this awful complaint. I attended psychologists, psychiatrists, and counselors. I tried tapping, that's EFT. I did a 10 to 12-week course on mindfulness and meditation, but nothing seemed to relieve me. These techniques are amazing. I have little or no anxiety, and the thoughts don't bother me either, thankfully. I would advise anyone who is suffering from anxiety or intrusive thoughts to do the program. So within them, she probably did get a little bit of relief, small, but when you have these intrusive thoughts so severe, it doesn't feel like you're ever getting relief because you're stuck in the loop, and it's really hard to ever see you're going to get better. So I wanted to share just different varieties of intrusive thoughts, but the program, the treatment I offer, it doesn't matter what intrusive thoughts you have, just to let you know, it's irrelevant. But this is a person that had sexual intrusive thoughts for 30 years. So I've suffered from OCD for as long as I can remember. I had some level of intrusive thoughts. Just to see that throughout my life. I've always had some level of intrusive thoughts throughout my life. I have tried CBT and counselling in the past, but neither treatment worked for me. I have been on 40 milligrams of antidepressants for the past 15 years. These have helped, however, they impacted my life in other ways, tiredness being the main thing. Since doing the OCD program, I can honestly say it's changed my life. Almost instantaneously, I could feel the relief. It was like my brain was able to relax for the first time in a long time. I have been able to cut my medication from 40 mg daily to 10 mg, which has seen my energy levels increase dramatically as a result. So that's amazing. Again, this is not about what treatment, anything about other treatments. This is just a personal story from someone. So that is amazing that she has suffered for so long and is coming off medication. Okay, so recovered from harm OCD. The intrusive thoughts were constant. Even when I slept, I would have them in the middle of the night, and they scared the life out of me. I was constantly on the internet trying to find something to stop the intrusive thoughts. And that is when I found Linda's OCD course. Since I completed the course, I'm a different person. I no longer experience the reaction to the intrusive thoughts. Therefore, I no longer have the intrusive thoughts. I feel so much better. So if there's anyone that is going through what I went through, there is help out there. Recovered from homosexual OCD. So in relation to homosexual OCD, I have a lot of clients, male, female, and I've released podcasts on homosexual OCD because it's very, very, you might say there's not much awareness around it and a lot of shame around this specific type of OCD, okay? So personally, talk therapy did not really work for me. Even though on the sessions I would leave feeling great, the intrusive thoughts were still there and were only getting worse. When I started the OCD program, I began to feel a difference in about a week, and I cannot express how hopeful and happy that made me feel. I couldn't believe that I had suffered for so long and that I was finally on the road to recovery. It makes me excited to know how much better I feel already, and that I will be feeling even better as the time goes by. Finally ready to become free from OCD and the suffering it has caused you, now is the time to get the solution you've been waiting for. So I have spent years trying to find a solution for OCD and can cut out all the second guessing for you on how you can be free from OCD. Okay, so really what it is, it's a 90-day, it's a 12-week program, all right? It involves guided weekly modules teaching the specific techniques to be free from OCD. So you get a module per week. You will have a daily practice guide. So you'll have a practice that you do every day, and that'll be guided for you. You know exactly what to do. You have a weekly journal that you can fill in. This is helpful because throughout the program, you know, you do spike for sure. There is triggers, and we want to have a journal because, you know, often that we can feel a relief and then we're spiked again and we're back into that state of nothing will ever work on, consumed with it. So when we have a journal, allows us to keep track of, okay, well, yesterday was a good day, so maybe tomorrow is going to be a good day. It gives you more motivation that I'm not going to be stuck in this forever, okay? There's an online private community. Again, this is not on any social media platform. This is completely private. In the community, it can be private. You can even change your name. It's completely private. So there's no issue with that. You have accountability with daily check-ins. So the key to this is practice. The key for your recovery is doing your practice. What helps you do your practice, having accountability. So you check in on a daily basis in the community with your practice done, okay? Just stating your practice is done. That's where you're going to see change. This program doesn't work just by knowing, okay, you know, program works by doing. It has to be dedication. You have to feel like you're going to commit to it. you have to feel like you want to change, all right? There's a weekly live call for Q&A. So we do a weekly live call every Monday, and that is on Zoom. So you can be anywhere in the world, obviously. It's on Monday evening at 7:30, but again, if you can't make it, it'll be recorded. So that's an option for someone that can't make it. All right. Now, on the weekly live calls, you don't have to show your face. You can be completely anonymous, camera off. You can ask questions there and then, or you can ask questions in a private forum. So with the 12-week program, along with what's offered, the main things are for the recovery of OCD. But I also have bonus material because I understand the importance of all these specific techniques as well that I'm going to share. And the most important one out of them there is the inner child practice. This is where you will learn to. So first of all, you're going to learn to regulate the nervous system. That is where you're going to start feeling relief. Okay, so the thoughts will come in, but the reaction will be coming down. As the reaction comes down, the thoughts also fade. Okay, it's because what gives the thoughts fuel, what gives the thoughts power is the reaction. One feeds the other. It's fuel. The anxiety is fuel for the thoughts. That's what makes them feel important. That's why the brain keeps bringing them back, because we've our bodies have said this is important by how we react, but we can't switch that off, as you know. That's why we do the practice, because it's coming from the nervous system, that sympathetic arousal state. Once you get your nervous system into a more balanced state, in other words, where you're not reacting to the thoughts in time, you're going to look at this really, really powerful, I think it's the key as well, is the inner child. This is not where you're going to be going back into looking at potential events, something that may have triggered this, or potential emotional things we hold. It can have trauma for sure. It doesn't always have to have trauma to have OCD. But there can be elements of 100% elements of emotions that we're holding about ourselves in the subconscious. The inner child is where we learn to reparent the part of ourselves that holds these emotions. So in the subconscious mind, basically from the age of 0 to 7, all our perceptions were formed. And we didn't have the conscious mind, wasn't developed till after 7. So everything really was absorbed into the subconscious. Our environment, how we were spoken to, how we felt, our behavior, our emotions were there. So in the inner child, we're going to learn how to reparent parts of ourselves that maybe feels shame, maybe feels guilty, feels bad, because these are the emotions that will keep coming up. So when you think about an intrusive thought, for example, for me, when I had an intrusive thought of harming others, family members, the emotions that was triggered there was feeling bad, feeling guilty, feeling shame, like shame for thinking these thoughts. Okay, when I realized that I actually have carried a feeling of shame, I've carried a feeling of guilt and a feeling of what if I do something bad, or feeling bad for certain things. So we want to address these underlying emotions because they have always been there for me. It's just the thoughts were more of a trigger. The thoughts triggered more of these emotions, but that emotion was always there. It just was dormant. It mightn't have been awoken, you might say, until I had the thought, and then it became bigger. Okay, so the inner child is where you learn how to reparent yourself, parent the aspect of myself that would hold these emotions. And this is really like a life changer, because when you think about it, when we can learn to manage our emotions, that is the key to peace of mind in every aspect of our life, from relationships to career to just being happy in ourselves without even the OCD. The inner child is really, really key. So that's one of my favorite things as well. There'll also be things there for sleep. So if you've issues with, because it can have with anxiety, it can cause insomnia. And then we look at gratitude. Gratitude is about really in time, obviously not at the start, because it's really impossible to look at any gratitude when we're in a state of fear. It's impractical, okay? So with the course, you will have lifetime access to all content. So you'll have a lifetime access to all that content, all right? And then after 12 weeks, you will have an option to stay in the community. So you will be in the community for 12 weeks. After 12 weeks, you won't be in the community, but you'll have access to all the content, like the course material. But if you want, you can stay in the community. And I would advise to stay in the community, because that's really when, after 12 weeks, really when you're going to see huge results. But some people can, they can feel so good, which is amazing, that the practice is not really being done, and they can slip a little bit. So that's why we have the community to keep you accountable. Okay, so the cost then of the Free from OCD program, the total value of it is €3,000. And really it's probably a lot more actually, but it's 3,000 really is the value of it. Again, as I said, I've spent years for different therapies and so on, going through the process. And as you know, if you've gone to different therapies, you know that it is that kind of cycle of maybe staying in therapy. But today, the pricing and the payment structure, so there's two options. Option one is you have a payment plan. The payment plan is, sorry, did you raise a hand there, Kathy, is it? Kathy raised hand. Okay, I can ask, we go to questions at the end if that's okay, since you can hear me. Option one, payment plan is €297 per month for 3 months. So that's €891. So that's €297 per month. So that's a payment plan for someone that wants a payment plan. Then we have the option two. Option two is a pay in full. This is €800. So you save €91 from a payment plan that's there, all right? But I'm doing a special offer for people that's on the webinar, that if they sign up within 24 hours, pay in full is €700. So really you're saving €191 within that, all right? Okay, so I've just done some frequently asked questions. These frequently asked questions just give you a little bit more understanding of the program. How long do I need to dedicate to the practice? So you will start off with 5 minutes a day, and over the 12 weeks, be approximately 45 minutes a day. There's one specific breath called the OCD breath. You'll be doing that one breath for 31 minutes in one sitting eventually. And that's when you really see the changes, all right? Huge changes. These breath techniques, they are very technical. It's not just focusing on our breath. It's not just trying to bring our awareness here. Well, that's useful, and mindfulness, I'm all for that as well. There's specific techniques where you're going to be timing the breath. You're going to be suspending the breath, holding the breath in, and doing various technical exercise that rebalances the nervous system. How often do I practice? You practice daily. And is it okay to be on medication and do the program? Yes. So you would never come off any medication during the program. Once you're feeling better, you consult your GP and you start weaning off your medication in line with your GP, all right? But 100% you can be on medication. What happens, as you see in the review, is that the person will feel so good that they'll start coming off the medication, but always consult your GP to do that. What happens after the 12 weeks program? You will have lifetime access to the course content. You also have the option to stay in the community for reduced fees. That can be later on. Do I continue to practice after the 12 weeks? So you will have gained significant relief in 12 weeks. The 12 weeks is going to be getting you up to doing your practice for the 31 minutes. For one practice, to approximately 45 minutes, we add in other practices. So you will have relief for sure. You'll have a lot of relief, okay? But in order to be free from this, fully free from it, it's recommended to practice for approximately 6 months. This will be discussed in the program when you go in, but just so that you know, okay? Because it'd be really like for 12 weeks to be completely free from OCD, you're on the path, like you're on the journey. You won't need to look. If you're doing your practice, you will know that you have found the key to change in this, okay? So you'll know that this is just something that you'll do. You won't do it for life, but you'll do it for a period of time. We have to understand OCD is a very debilitating issue. And if we look at the treatment that's out there already, it's medication, ERP, CBT. And in my experience from working with a lot of clients is that they are still on medication, you know, years later, and they're still in therapy years later. So it isn't much to put in practice for yourself on a daily basis to see change. The good news about it is that you can be anywhere and doing this. You know, I had people on holidays and, you know, they're empowered. Like they don't feel like they're what am I going to do if I'm away and I'm triggered? Like you are empowered. Why are you empowered? Because you know you're doing something every day that's changing it. So the next question is, I'm in a different time zone. How can I access the weekly calls? So the weekly calls are on Mondays at 7:30 Irish Standard Time. Each call will be recorded and can be accessed on the course platform. Do I have to go on camera on the weekly calls? All the calls are done via Zoom and you're not under any obligation to have a camera on. It's advised to do whatever feels best to you. So again, I'm just going through a few things that you might want to ask. How can I ask a question in private on the weekly live Q&As? So the course program community is not on any social media platform, as I said, and it's completely private. If you would like to ask a question at any time in the program, you can put it into the community. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, what you can do is you can send me a question privately. I get your question. So if you have a question about intrusive thoughts and you really want advice around something, you know, that's completely fine. And I welcome that. But you say you send me a question, I address your question in the group on the weekly live calls, but I never give your name, because if I just answered that to you, yes, it'll benefit you, of course, but we have to understand that you're going to be in a community with other people who have OCD. So your question will benefit others, but your name is never given. So it's really irrelevant. To me, it's relevant, obviously, on names, but for you, and I understand the sensitive nature of OCD, you know, I want to reassure that there is no names given, like, so you can be at complete ease knowing that you're in a safe space and a sharing space as well. This video from Adam. Adam was one of my clients. He's completely free from OCD, and he has just a little message here.
Hi everyone, my name is Adam, and I suffered with OCD for about 4 years before I found out about Linda's course. I suffered with intrusive thoughts, compulsions, and they were like, it really took a toll on my life. And then I seen that Linda was offering this type of therapy as I went through cognitive behavioral therapy, talk therapy, medication, and none of them really worked. So when I seen this type of therapy, I was like, I was intrigued. So I went ahead and gave it a shot, and trust me, this therapy works wonders. The evidence is there for yourself when you start doing it. This is me talking about my experience, but once you dedicate yourself to the course and stick to it and work within that, trust me, you guys, you can change your life, and this needs to get out to more people. So don't be afraid, go for it, and don't look back. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Adam. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time out to learn about how you can become free from OCD. And I appreciate your time again. Thank you so much for being here with me. I hope you found it helpful. I hope you found it enlightening. I hope you found it hopeful. I hope you found it inspiring to know that you can become free from OCD. So thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to open it up then for some questions. Okay, so I'm going to open up for some questions so people can you can ask the questions, like if you want to put on your phone. Let me see, how do I manage this here? I'm just learning myself. Let me see now, just a second. I'll try and Kathy allowed to talk. Now, Kathy, can you talk and permitted?
Hi.
Hi, Kathy.
Yeah.
How are you?
Yeah, so you mentioned the type of yoga there. Was it Kundalini or something like that, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you also mentioned that you were an expert in this, so I just wonder what the qualifications are.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, I suppose I'm a Kundalini yoga teacher, so I'm a certified Kundalini yoga teacher. I've had OCD myself, and I've had thousands of people around the world, so okay. I feel like I'm a really good expert.
Okay, so yeah, so it's basically a yoga technique that you use to treat it. Then is that kind of summarize it? Yeah, exactly. Very basically, yeah. Yeah,
but it's not yoga. Like, you're not going to be doing any yoga moves or anything like that. It's not yoga. It's specific breath work.
Okay, that's grand. No Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Let me see, I have some questions here. I'll just. Do you use a breathing tech? Do you use this from Diana? Do you use the breathing whilst you are in a panic? Yeah, so Diana, so this practice, like if we only used this practice while we're in a panic, it wouldn't be long-term results. Okay, so yeah, we can have little techniques to help us while you're in that panic, but we need something that's consistently daily, that's going to change this long-term. So you'll be doing this regardless if you're in a panic or not. So say some days you're not in a panic, that doesn't mean you don't do it. You do it anyway, you create your practice, because that's going to reduce the panics in general, as I talked about before. This is not something to use just to manage symptoms. This is something to change the whole thing altogether. Okay, does that make sense? Is there one-to-one time with you and not the others? Or no, they're in the group, it's a group program. So there wouldn't be any one-to-one. You can, if you want, get sessions separately. Well, if you're in the program, you can get some one-to-one. That's at additional cost. But if you're in the program and that's what you want, you will have just a group, but there is an option there for some if you want one-on-one or see how you go. I'm not sure your questions is how does the breathing help? Not sure what you mean by that in terms of how does it help? Because it's just, I've run through the webinar in terms of it changes the OCD. I suppose that's really how it helps. So can I ask, do you help with children? Yeah, so I have helped with children at 12. Yeah, I've worked with kids as well, and they really take well to it, really, really well. What you could do is you can contact me after, or if you want, you could join the program and you could do it with your child. With kids, they generally don't need like 31 minutes a day. So the OCD breath, one of the practices 31 minutes a day, they generally wouldn't need that because their nervous systems, like they're just developing. So they notice a very big change very quick. But again, it's about doing the practice, and yeah, it's very, very beneficial. I've had many kids, 10, 11, 12, changes completely different, changes them completely back to themselves, especially around the COVID. I had a lot of kids and teenagers around COVID. This is when the fears were kind of triggered even more. Laura, are the breathing techniques? So Laura, yeah, so in terms of pregnancy, there is the breath in it, and the specific breath would be where you have to suspend your breath and do this technical exercise. It wouldn't be advisable for pregnancy to a level. You could do other ones until you obviously, you know, when you have the baby, then you could look at doing the program. That's what I advise. You can do some of them, but only small amounts, not to the level that, you know, you would need, but they would still help you for sure. But again, I'd reach out to me separately around that, because I wouldn't advise doing the OCD practice, definitely not full when you're pregnant, but later on definitely. But if you needed something then in between, we could potentially do something around that. So is that okay? Is anyone else, any other questions?
Hi, Linda.
Yeah,
it's Kathy. I just wondering, do you have a base where you do this, like somewhere you can physically go to do it as opposed to doing it online? Where would your like headquarters be, or are you based in Dublin, or are you
like,
different?
as in for the group, is it?
Yeah, like if you wanted to just do this, you know, the way where you were on the TV there and you were in a kind of
no, that's like, that was 2017. No, this program is just online now. There's no group program in person.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Has your program been evaluated by a psychologist, for example? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Diana, as in terms of evaluated. Maybe you want to expand a bit on that?
Huh.
Diana? No? Yeah, if you want to expand a bit on what you mean. I don't know what you mean by evaluated, like by a psychologist. Do you want to expand? Anyone else? Sorry, I mean, tested for reliability, effectiveness. Well, like there is clinical trials done, so they're online. They've been, you know, tested for reliability, effectiveness, I suppose, if you want to look at them. But in terms of a psychologist, no, it wouldn't have been. Again, like it really depends. I mean, for me, it's like the proof is in the pudding, you know. It isn't in, you know, we can say we can have a million psychologists, and I'm all for that. Proof is in the pudding. Proof is in, does it work? Proof is in, you know, seeing people that's changed. So to me, that's I go for that any day, you know. Okay, Kathy, thank you. How do we get the offer? Yeah, you'll get an email, Dan. The email will be sent out to you, and you will have the link for the sign up and the discount code. Okay, so you'll get that straight away after this. All right. Thank you, Dana. That's great. Thank you. Anyone else like to ask any questions? Are you all good? If that's it, that's okay, no problem. Okay, so that's it. Thank you so much again, everybody. I really enjoyed. When would it start? It's on all the time, the program. So it's you know, when you join straight away. You'll be getting module 1 straight away. So everyone that's in the program could be on different modules, because it's not just open, it's open all the time. So if we have other questions, can we email you? Yeah, if you've other questions, email me. But again, I can't be guaranteed to get back straight away, but I'll do my best. Okay, so thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciated your time, and I hope you have a lovely evening or wherever you are day. And I look forward to hearing from you, and take care, mind yourself. Okay, take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.